Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, one and all, and welcome to the next edition of The Smoking Barrel. I'm Rustin Edwards, based in Geneva, with my illustrious world traveling co host, Mr. Matt Stanley in hot Dubai.
Greetings. 21 degrees here. Just an update. As always, a weekly update.
Oh, that's not too
But
hot then. That's okay. That's golf
perfect.
weather. What are you doing?
Oh,
Oh, I see your golf clubs. Okay.
they're over there. Yeah, they don't work. Um, no, I did play. It was both our birthdays this time last week. So actually, I played last Monday, which was very nice. But no, it's fast. Where are we? January 19th of January, 12:27. Um, we will in 4 months' time. It will probably be about 41. So yeah, no, look, it's been a couple of weeks since we were on, but
But I think it was something somewhere I was reading that in some weeks you feel like it's just a day, and other weeks it feels like it's a decade.
yeah.
I think in the last 3 weeks we've had enough action so far in the oil markets that we could say it's been like a year already.
It is, and I think a lot of people agree and say the same. And we're going to break the shackles a little bit this week because what we don't like to do on the Smoking Barrel, like, comment, subscribe, is we don't like to talk politics because I'm not very good at tax, and I'm very worried that it might get me into trouble. So we're not going to go all like opinionated, but I fear that we're in a position when we opine on energy markets that we can't not touch on things political because the only thing that seems to be moving the needle right now are what is happening in the world of geopolitics.
That is true. That is very true. I mean, when you think about it, we've had the seizure of Maduro by the U.S. government, and then all the machinations of what the U.S. government's going to do with Venezuelan oil and how they're going to be marketing that oil, which is a bit of a strange one, if you ask me.
Yep.
We've had the massive protest in Iran and are they still going on? What's happening in Iran? There's how many people have been killed there, and what's the U.S. response going to be in Iran? And
Yeah.
we sprinkle on top of that a little bit of Greenland, and the events over this weekend with the U.S. Trump administration saying they're going to put tariffs on their NATO members for putting troops into Greenland and not backing the U.S. purchase of Greenland, which
Yeah. Yeah.
which is a bit of a strange one because in the U.S. Constitution, which is the governing document of the United States, and I'm going to give a government lesson here for real quick, the branch of the U.S. government which has the authority to purchase and acquire territory is the U.S. Congress, not the executive branch. The executive branch has no power to annex, purchase, or do anything else that is not authorized by the U.S. Congress when it comes to acquiring new territory or entering or exiting treaties. Full stop. So all this, in my mind, with Greenland, and I'm sorry to jump on the Greenland bandwagon already, is a bunch of bollocks because the president can't do anything. He may biovate that he can do whatever he wants, but he is constrained by the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah. I mean, look, when you say the words, they are not able to purchase Greenland, I wasn't aware it was for sale.
Well, not all land is for sale until you know it's for sale. I mean, when you think of the Alaska, when the Alaskan territory was purchased by Stewart, it wasn't like the Russians put a big sign for sale. Please submit your bids.
Yeah, but it's not like in the UK we have this protected land around the M25, which is the main sort of peripheral road that goes around the city of London. Frightful thing. Traffic, not it's a nightmare. But around it's this green belt land, I call it, and it's like you can't build on it because they want to, there has to be some part of England that is left green. But sometimes the government come in and do this compulsory purchase order, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's like, look, we're doing this, so sell your house and move.
Well, that's called
And
eminent domain. That
okay,
happens everywhere.
okay, fine. I'm sure it does, but I'm using an anecdote in the UK. I don't. I didn't know you could do it in like another country and just sort of say, oh, by the way, we're going to buy this. It's not monopoly. It's not like I'm going to go all in and I'm going to buy Mayfair on my first spin, even though you can't, second spin only. But it's mad. Like I'll read you three. Here are three in on the BBC.com, the only news service, of course. Starmer to give Downing Street speech as Trump plans 10% tariffs in Greenland row. That's the first one. Second headline. Europe won't be blackmailed, Danish PM says in wake of Trump Greenland threats. That's the second one. Then the third one. US believes its power matters more than international law, UN chief tells BBC. And the last one, Trump tests boundaries of his power as Minnesota pushes back. Now, if you, I use this quite a lot. If you unfortunately woken up, been in a coma since before Christmas, and you woke up and you went, I'll just have a little look, see what's going on in the old news, and you read what's happened, and you go, what is going on? Like it's mad, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is, we've had enough activity here in the first 3 weeks of this year of 2026 that would pretty much fill up a calendar when you think about it from a geopolitical standpoint. You know, the whole issues around Venezuela, take Greenland, put that off to the side for a minute, because that's yes, Greenland has a lot of natural resources that I'm sure there's part of the reason why there's interest in acquiring that territory from the U.S. point of view. Is it a strategic location? Yes, it is. That's why there has been a U.S. military presence on Greenland for the last 80, not 80 years, excuse me, 50 years. And there's an active military base in Greenland right now anyway, because it has been an important part of the NATO security infrastructure for that period of time due to its geographic location. But nevertheless, it's, I almost want to say it's a sideshow. To me, the big show is Venezuela and Iran.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with that, and I think just won't we won't label Greenland too much because obviously what's going to happen in Davos this week? Trump's going there with the biggest delegation ever from the US down to Davos, and I think Wednesday he speaks, and I mean, what people are going to go? Oh, well, let's wonder what he's going to say next. Anyway, look, we'll deal with that when we deal with it. I agree. In for how it's moving the energy needle right now, I don't think it is. I think it's more around just what he's doing is what it is, right? But when we talk about what's happening, what is moving the needle, it obviously it's Venezuela and Iran. But just on that, Donald Trump's got another 2 years left for his current term, right?
no, he's got 3 years.
He's got 3 years left. Okay, fine.
Yeah, he's only done 1 year. Only
Is
one
that
year.
stop it? He's only 1 year.
Only
God.
1 year. It feels like a decade, but it's only been a year.
You'd think start slowly, 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 catchy monkey, slowly, slowly, quick Trumpy. Okay, fine. What is whoever gets in power next? I know that probably what will dominate the headlines within the next year. Surely, why don't they just go? I mean, what? Should, I don't know because I don't know. I'm too stupid to think about this properly. But would he just go here, Greenland, here, Denmark? There's Greenland back. Here's the border. I'm going to reopen. Whoever is in power just undoes all these policies. Like, is he? I mean, is it megalomaniacal? Is that the right verb to use for him? I mean, surely this is quite extreme movements we're seeing from the Donald, right? So,
Well, it is a case of pendulum swing because we've had, you have to look at the U.S. policies and the failures of the U.S. government over the last 30, 40, 40 years almost. And you see that every time you get a new president in power, of course, there's a complete reversal of what the other policies were. Now, the unfortunate thing, and we're talking politics again, U.S. government structure, the unfortunate thing that has happened is that with the hyperpolarization that has happened within the U.S. Congressional branch, the Senate and the House of Representatives, and you have very super thin majorities. So you've never had an obscene majority where you've got over 60 seats or in one party or another party. You've had these very thin majorities. And when you have these very thin majorities, nothing gets done. And so since the Obama administration, when this, and it started even with the Bush administration, these super thin majorities, you start getting the president legislating by fiat. And this has been going on since Obama's first term. And it's just carried forward because you don't have a functioning legislative branch that is there to write law, enact law for the president to sign. You've got a non-functioning legislative branch, and that's created all this turmoil. And so now you've gotten to this point where you've got a president, first day in office, I now put 100 executive orders out, that reverse executive orders from the last person and put my policies now in place. And so it has changed the checks and balances of the US government have been eroded massively since the Obama administration because it's become the royal executive office, not the presidential office in
Right.
my opinion. Now, with that, you now start getting these weird, okay, so if you do get somebody like a Trump in power who has his ideas about what he wants to do, how he wants to do things, and he starts just enacting things without thorough check and thorough balance that you have with a normally functioning government, then you do get these little, oh yeah, we're going to do this. I mean, like the whole idea with Venezuelan oil. The U.S. government says, okay, we've sold $500 million worth of oil, and apparently that money has ended up in a Qatari bank account. Now, under normal functioning government seizure rules, when these types of sales happen, the money goes into an escrow account that is monitored by the U.S. Treasury. So it's like, why is money been moved to Qatar?
Okay. That one I'm not going to opine on.
Well, I don't want to opine because I don't have enough facts to say, okay, what is going on there to understand what the hell's going on there. But it just,
Mm.
there are certain things that the Trump administration is doing that the congressional midterms are in November. That's when the House and the Senate can change parties because there'll be midterm voting. And by January 3rd, there'll be a new Congress. And if this new Congress is more Democratic than a Republican, there'll be impeachment of Trump. There'll be a lot of things passed by this new Congress to stop all the stuff that Trump is doing. So Trump basically has another year to try to enact policies that he wants to enact without the approval of the Congress.
Right. Okay. So we've got another year of it. Okay. All
Potentially
right.
another
Look.
year.
Uh,
Potentially another year.
Potentially another year. Okay. Wow. So we're only halfway through the first month, and we've got it all to wait for. Okay. Look, the other points you mentioned here, Venezuela, Iran, and Russia. I want to show you a chart here. Let me bring it up. A bit slow. It's basically what we call our chart of the month. Based on an article we recently released. I think it was on Friday. Let me just show you. Can you see this all right?
Yep.
Okay. So this came out on 15th. So what's that? Thursday. Um, Here's our crude intake. This isn't the chart of the month, but look at this. So crude intake is the highest it's been certainly, you've got the 5 year range down here. And then you got last year, 2025, crude intake pretty good, but this year even higher, just under 86 million barrels in by summer. Um, but this is chart of the month. So it's sanctioned barrels keep pushing floating storage higher. So what we've got here, look, you can see we're hitting here just under 140 million barrels of floating storage that is dominated by Iran, Russia is the blue, and then Venezuela as well. You can see it's pretty, this is obviously the 3 year chart. So we're back up to where we were since July 2022. Now, this was still high because we were really still drawing down on stocks that we built during COVID times. It took a long time to kind of get back up. But look, for me, what is moving the needle the most out of the current 19 days into January, the current suite of issues is what's happening with Iran. And this is what Homi and my colleague wrote on Friday. 9 million barrels a day at risk, while the Middle East Gulf Arab states lobbied to prevent a US strike on Iran. Um, Here's the share of global seaborne oil trade that goes through the Straits of Hormuz. This is Q4 last year. So in total, 45, well, we got 9 million barrels a day, essentially, goes through the Straits of Hormuz. You can see the splits here. I'm trying to work out what this all means. LNG as well. I mean, what's your view here? Do you agree that the GCC core got together and actually convinced Donald Trump not to hit Iran? Do you think there's more to it? I mean,
Well,
surely,
I mean, there's what gets reported in the press and what doesn't get reported in the press, right? At the time of the protests and let's say the threats that Trump was making against the Iranian regime and about help was on the way, from a military asset base, I don't think the U.S. had the assets in position to actually do anything.
right?
Yes, there are destroyers and missile frigates that are always on patrol in that region of the world, operating in the Red Sea, operating off the coast of Israel, operating in the Persian Gulf itself and around the Gulf of Oman. But they may not have the right weaponry on board to launch a targeted strike against the Iranian regime. And so, therefore, it was a bit premature to make any type of statements about things being, help is on the way. Now, there is a U.S. carrier strike group, the Abraham Lincoln, which was reported to be underway heading to the Persian Gulf
Yeah,
from China,
yeah,
from the South China Sea. You also have, other jet assets that were said to be on the move, moving into regional support areas, i.e., Ramstedt Air Force Base in Germany, Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. But had they arrived yet? And of course, that's all kept quite quiet. And you had statements from the Saudis and from the Qataris that they would not allow the use of airspace in order to strike Iran.
right.
So there was probably a lot about that. And when we discussed this back in June of last year, when we had the Israeli-Iranian war, there's always a fear that Iran will close off the Straits of Hormuz and cause an issue there.
Yeah,
So if you don't have the assets in place to stop that action, then you really shouldn't do anything to attack Iran because that would be Iran's stop or knee-jerk reaction would be to close off the straits. That's what everybody's afraid of, that they would try to close off the straits.
right.
Now, logistically, that's very tough to do. They've tried it once in the past. I think we talked about this back in June. It's, 36 kilometers in width, so there's a lot of space there to try to jam ships and stop it from moving. Now, vessels probably would self halt their transfers because they want to pay a higher insurance rate to go through an active shooting zone or active shooting area. And then there's the question of how long does the regime hold on if there is a military attack that decapitates the head of the government.
Okay. Wow, look, there's a lot to pick at there. Okay, let me just share the map so you can see. I mean, last time we did this was June. We were talking about, your advice, maritime experience, etc., etc. Obviously, this is where we are. So we're still seeing, if I've
Well,
sort of
that's Baba
float.
Mandeb. You have to go a little bit to the north.
No, I know, but this is where I'm just sort of coming from. You still see tankers that have got armed guards on board, Russian crew on board, etc., etc. So with what's happening now, you said the what is it? The Abraham Lincoln is heading to the Middle East. Will be here on Wednesday or something. Um, how, from a maritime point of view, because it hasn't been covered yet properly. We heard last week that Maersk are going back through the Red Sea.
Yep.
So is is it not a little early? You know, are those risks the reason why they stopped? Are they not as high as they were? Obviously not last June when all ships kicking off, but surely those risks are very much there right now with what is happening. In fact, it probably is as tense in June. It just hasn't been any activity. So what happens with the Red Sea, do you think? What happens then with diffs and freight and product cracks and what the same issues we had? Is that not just a rinse and repeat that's on the cards?
Well, you would think that it could be if the Houthis had full-on support and access to weapons. And so, what has happened also in the last couple of weeks is that there's been a renewed, let's say, pressure put on the Yemenis country from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
And so, the war there has picked up tempo once again,
yeah.
and it's probably going to put pressure on the Houthis to do something. So when you think of destabilizing the whole region, yeah, you don't want to have the Houthis start shooting at ships and Iran shooting on ships and causing a big disruption in vessel maritime logistics because you now have the Red Sea and the Straits of Hormuz both being blocked again. So maybe there's a point of take a little time, let things get hammered out in Yemen a bit more, and then get your assets in place so then you can really go after Iran, um, and push the Iranian government over the top.
Yeah. I mean, I think so of everything that's happening right now. So forget Greenland, like we said, and that's more a sort of a much wider ranging political issue. What if the EU reciprocal tariffs and the threats, etc., etc. That's not what we're talking about here. When you're talking about Venezuelan oil largely flowing, right? So I actually
Well,
haven't looked at what flows is looking like from Venezuela. Let me show you real time so you can have a look. But yeah, go on. What were you about to say? Sorry.
well, it's to me the interesting thing is that if you're trying to put what could be the knock-on effect of all this. And here we are going to I'm going to opine a bit and pontificate a bit. Venezuela, heavy sour crudes, Iran, predominantly heavy sour crudes, or heavy crudes.
Hmm.
If you have a case where Venezuela is no longer sanctioned and that goes up to 1.2 to 1.3 million barrels a day of exports, which is probably the high they could get to without any further real investment in the infrastructure inside the country, um, that starts putting a lot of economic pressure against Russia. Now,
Okay.
if you have Iran all of a sudden get toppled and a new government comes in place which is friendly and you lift sanctions on Iran, now you've got even more pressure on the Russian government because now you've got more crude coming to market, which is going to be competing against your oil. So from a grander geopolitical thing, and maybe I'm giving people too much credit, but is this a way to put more pressure on Russia without putting direct pressure on Russia?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah. It's. I mean, this is it's so much to pick at here, isn't it? Look, I'm just talking. So what we see, we're 800 and what we're looking at here, 824,000 barrels a day for December. We see no cargoes going to China. Curaçao's back. Um, Aruba isn't back yet.
Well,
Curaçao's back.
But Aruba's not, that's just a storage facility. There's a lot of tankage in Aruba associated with the old Aruban refinery, which has been shut down for years.
Yeah, no, sure. But is that was it the Hovensa refinery was there?
No, no, that's that. Who
St.
had
Croix.
that? Yeah, St. Croix is Hovensa. I'm trying to remember who had the Aruba refinery. Citgo had Aruba.
Okay. Okay, but I mean, what you can see is you can see a definite change. China last month, no exports. Sorry, yeah, no, there were no cargoes heading to China of Venezuelan crude. It's all going to either the US. We actually got others quite prevalent. Um, but yeah, it seems to be Venezuela seems to be flowing. But again, if it gets to say it's just under 1 million barrels a day and it gets up to 1.5 million barrels a day. Okay, that's fine, right? It's going to display some heavy other crudes, the Mexican, the Castillas, the um, Cold Lake blend, and the Canadian. They're going to come under pressure, but it kind of pales into insignificance when you think about the market threat to what's happening in Iran. And it has to be, of everything that's going on, Iran is the biggest disruptor right now to why markets are $5 a barrel higher than they were 2 weeks ago.
Well, yeah, because again, I think that's the geopolitical. Well, there's a few other things going on in the oil markets as well. Because the one thing we haven't even talked about were the tanker strikes in the Black Sea against ships
Yes.
waiting to load at the CPC terminal in Novosibirsk, and so that in itself was a big disruption because the CPC terminal, 1.6 million barrels a day, currently operating about 500,000 barrels a day due to maintenance and to bad weather. Kazakhstan is openly pushing barrels through the BTC pipeline as well as trying to find other outlets to keep their revenues coming in.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that puts, and that's actually a real impact to oil markets because you've increased the insurance costs of going to load oil out of CPC.
Yeah.
And you've also degraded CPC's export capacity. And so that's, to me, part of the reason why the markets are as strong as they are at the moment, with the added fear that something's going to happen in Iran,
Yeah.
because if you're still if assets are being moved into that region, even though they've talked about, oh, they're not executing people, they're not doing this, not doing that, but it seems like every day the government has increased the amount of people that they've killed, or they've openly admitted to higher numbers almost every day of the amount of people that were killed in the protest.
Yeah.
And so there probably will be some kinetic action, I would think, within the next 5 to 10 days in Iran, just because assets are moved in the location. You've got pressure to do something to support this protest movement in Iran, and it could be the time to do something.
Yeah, look, I agree, and I think, yeah, look, I think that that's let's. I don't want to say wait and see what happens, but I think that everyone's kind of waiting for that. He's keeping he's keeping quiet on that right now. But I think you're right in that. Last article I'm going to share, um, the CPC attacks. That was quite a movement. That Matt put together this last week. Matt Wright, it's last Tuesday, was it not? Yeah. Um, because it was on the non-shadow fleet. So it was a significant escalation on just targeting Russian infrastructure. I think that what does he go on state? One was the Matilda, which is manned by Thinner Maris. Then you got the Delta tankers as well. These hadn't been Novorossiysk loads both Russian and Kazakhstani crudes. The CPC is a grade that does discharge into Europe quite often, very often, but it was just an attack on Russian infrastructure. It wasn't an attack on ships that are moving Russian oil. And that was, freight has started off I don't want to say very well, but it's certainly roofed, right? I think VLCCs were over $100,000 a day at the middle of last week.
But
And that's,
when you take a Suezmax from ARA to Singapore at 6.4 million, I mean,
wow.
that's got to be the highest level I've seen in a long time for a Suezmax to move that trip.
For how long do you reckon?
What? I mean, I can't recall higher numbers than that.
Really?
Yeah. I
And is
mean,
that
maybe back in COVID, maybe.
wow. So, okay. Have you got our container indirect in chart that we can sometimes bring up when we're talking about freight because it's a good proxy. I don't know if containers has followed, but if it hasn't, which I imagine it probably hasn't, it's not really moving linear tankers and containers. But is that because the shadow fleet are just becoming bigger and bigger and there's less available sort of what do you call them?
Well,
What's
it's a
the tanker not in
combination
the
of,
shadow?
you've got, yeah. So you do have, the U.S. has seized 8 tankers now in the
Yeah,
Caribbean.
yeah,
Um, and if you open up Venezuela to normal shipping, that just increases the demand pull on tanker freight.
right,
Because Venezuelan crude normally moves on either Suezmaxes or Aframaxes. Venezuela can also load VLCCs, but it just adds more cargoes for a limited fleet size. And without having a rapid amount of new deliveries coming on market, because that's been the theme for large tonnage shipping tanker markets for the last couple of years, is that the order book is very low, but the age of tankers are getting higher.
right.
And so with that, you start losing things. Now in the container freight markets, yeah, container freight rates are just kind of, I would say, middling around, kind of middle of the road compared to where they were spiking back back when.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is $6.4 million for a Suezmax.
And if you
Wow.
see here, this is from Trading Economics, Container Freight Index. I mean, here you have in the height of at
Yeah.
the end of 2022, and here we are today.
Wow. So, yeah, I mean, because that spike in the middle, that's the Houthis, right?
Yeah, that's June of 24.
Yeah. So that's when the Bab el-Mandeb strikes were really sort of really prevalent. So shipping as an entire industry roofed. Whereas actually tankers, if you overlaid this container chart, the containerized freight index, and you overlaid that with what Suezmaxes have done, so i.e. the biggest size vessel you can get through the Suez Canal, I bet that would be you'd see some serious spikes, some serious divergences.
Well,
But look,
it would be almost a exponential curve versus that market.
yeah, yeah. All right, look, I mean, another week's gone. We've got another podcast down, second one of the year. I'm in Singapore next week, but we will record. But God knows what would have happened this time next week, Rustin.
Well,
And then,
I'm putting my money that we'll have some type of kinetic action in Iran. That's my guess. But again, it's Davos, so we'll see. Whoever talks to Trump last at Davos will basically tenor his thought process and his mindset.
yeah,
Um, will there be a purchase of Greenland? Probably not. Hopefully that rhetoric cools down and we get back to cooler heads and a more functioning, treaty environment, government environment. But who knows?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think all eyes are on Davos. The US are off today, Martin Luther King Day. So I think it's going to be pretty range bound after the European window. Um, but yeah, 63.46 we are for Ice Brent. I think we will see that chop around between probably 62 and a half and 66, something like that this week.
Yep.
And then I'm back here for a week, and then we've got IP week or IE week. So I'm hosting the Kepler event in London. I hope to see many of you there. And if I don't see you at our event, guess where I'll be?
King's Arm Tavern, Shepherd's Market.
Yes, sir. Around there. Strictly vocational work.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes, I too shall be popping in and out of that region throughout the IP week, IE week
Yes.
as well.
Yes. So we hope to see as many people as possible. But look, good to see you. Lots going on. Let us know what you think. Comment as you wish. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Yep. We'll see you all next week. Click like, comment, subscribe. Catch us on YouTube, Spotify, and on LinkedIn. And we'll catch you all on the fly.
Ciao.